Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Sherman Reed. Today I'll be doing my May wrap up. So before I get started, if you are new to this channel, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below as well as hit the notification bell. But May was not the greatest. Somehow I only read 9 books this entire month, which meant I read a total of 3,400 pages. And out of those 9 books, I read 4 books that were 3 stars, 2 books that were 3.5 stars, 2 books that were 4 stars, and 1 4.5 star read. So obviously, like, the quality wise was pretty decent. They're all above 3 stars and up, but in terms of quantity it was not the greatest. But to be fair though, May was busy. I was gone for about 8-9 days in New York City and I didn't read a single thing. I'm still reading the same book that I brought there, so that's saying something. It is now like a little after June, so it's just been not the greatest in terms of just my reading. I don't know what is happening. I'm just not really in the reading mood right now, but I just been like busy with going out, seeing people, meeting friends, just having a social life that I feel like reading for me has definitely taken like a less of a priority right now just because of everything else that's happening. So that's probably why, but I'm really hoping that June will pick up because this girl needs to read some more. Like, thank goodness I read a lot the first few months of this year, because right now, like on Goodreads at least, it's still showing that I am like ahead of schedule. But my number used to be like way ahead of schedule, and now it's like slowly starting to go back to, you know, not ahead of schedule. So I need to get to reading, and yeah, let's see how June goes. But let's talk about May books and what I thought about the books that I read. So the first book I want to discuss is Somewhere Only We Know by Maureen Gu. This book I gave 3 stars. I did talk about this book a little bit more in my May ARCs reading vlog, so I'll link that above and down below in case you want to check that out. But this book basically follows a girl called Lucky, who's a very, very famous K-pop star. One day she is in Hong Kong wrapping up her most recent tour, and she's actually about to make her international / American debuts, where, you know, things will change for the better for her. But that night after her last concert, she realized that she's a little burnt out, that things have changed since when she had first started to become a K-pop star, and she decides to sneak out of the hotel, grab a burger, kind of get a little peace of mind, like reorient herself. Then she bumps into a guy called Jack, who happens to be a paparazzi photographer. At first he doesn't know who she is, but after realizing who she is and how impactful taking pictures of her will be for his career, he decides to make the decision to kind of like hang out with her. But of course in the beginning he has no idea. He actually started to help her out of the kindness of his heart, really, without the intention of doing anything until later on. But as the story progresses, you know, things kind of get steamy between the two of them. Obviously romance ensues, and then misunderstanding, obviously. But I thought this book was really cute. I love the whole discussion about how K-pop and that kind of like stress of being scrutinized on a regular basis, having all those expectations, really high expectations from both your fans, your management, your company, your family, can really take a toll on you. I really loved all that discussion and how Lucky herself was trying to figure out what is best for her and kind of find that happy balance between what she wants to do while also, you know, staying true to her music while also making her fans happy. So I thought the book overall was really great, had great messages. The reason why I gave it only 3 stars is because I feel like it was very cliche. Like, there's just so much about this book just from the synopsis that I could really see what was happening, and it played out pretty much exactly the way that I expected it to. Nothing shocking, nothing unexpected. So that was why I feel like in terms of predictability, it was, you know, not the greatest. But overall though, I still really enjoyed the message. I liked the characters. I thought the romance was cute, but that was kind of it. The next book I want to discuss is I Guess I Live Here Now by Claire An. This book I gave 4 stars. So this book basically follows a girl called Melody, where one day something happens, a transgression, aka she is found smoking weed and gets caught by the police and sent to her back home to her mom. Obviously I don't think it's like a huge deal, but I guess like when you've never done anything crazy in your life, I guess it's a pretty big deal, pretty big shocking thing to your parents. So her parents decide to ship her back to Korea and basically tell her to live there now. We're done with New York, you know, go back to Korea. And so she doesn't even really have a chance to say goodbye to her best friend. So in the beginning of the book, she's very resentful to her family. Her dad actually wasn't even living with them in America. He was living in Korea this entire time, kind of making money and supporting the family from afar. So now she had to deal with the whole like new relationship with her father now that he is right there constantly on a daily basis, while also dealing with the new environment and new schools, new friends, just new country as a whole. And there's a bunch of culture shock that's involved, even though she's Korean, but she wasn't born in Korea, she wasn't raised really in Korean culture as much, that there's a lot of things that, you know, surprised her when she started to live there. And I thought the whole cultural aspect was really cool and really fascinating to read about. I also love the friendships that were formed in this book, as well as the romance. It was so cute. Like, as soon as the guy showed up, I was like, that's him, I know it's gonna happen, and I was right. And that's kind of why I didn't give the book 5 stars, just because I feel like there's just so many cliche moments in this book in general that I felt like it kind of took away some of my enjoyment, because I couldn't really tell how this book will progress. But what I really liked about this book was the family relationships and dynamics that were discussed, the friendships that were discussed between like leaving her best friend back home and how that changed between the two of them, making new friends, and how that impacted her view on like Korean society, the fact that her grandparents have different expectations on her, just a lot of different like relationships that were discussed that I thought was really cool, and I really love the discussions there. But I did also talk about this book a lot more in my May arcs reading vlog, so again, I'll link that above and down below in case you want to check that out. But I really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend this one. Then the next book that I picked up is Sister of the Bollywood Bride by Dadini Bajpaj. This book I gave 3 stars. I also talked about this book a little bit more in my May arcs reading vlog. Actually, the next book as well, I talked about in that video, so I'll link all of that above and down below in case you check it out. But this was really freaking cute. This was supposed to be like a Morgan Mathen's Save the Date, but Bollywood style. So it follows a girl called Minnie, whose big sister Vinny is actually getting married soon. And because of situations, Minnie is the one who is trying to plan the wedding for her sister and trying to make it as grand as possible without breaking the bank. And so now she's just on a mission to find caterers, to find the venues, to find a dress, dealing with family, as well as juggling a potentially new romance. This book overall was really cute. I really enjoyed it. The reason why I didn't give this book more than 3 stars is because it was just okay. I feel like even though it was cute, even though the romance is cute, I felt like I never felt very engaged with the book. I never felt connected to the characters. I listened to an audiobook, so I don't know, maybe there's just that disconnect going on for me, but I just felt like it could have been more, you know what I mean? And for me, like, I finished it and I was just like, oh, okay, that was cute, and like that was kind of it. Then this next book I picked up is The No Family by Grace K. Shim. This book I gave 3.5 stars. So this book follows a girl called Chloe who is absolutely obsessed with K-drama with her best friend, and one day she decides to take the 23andMe just on a whim. Her best, as it's a joke really, she thought like she was maybe related to this like Japanese dude for whatever reason, and it turns out that she is actually related to this extremely wealthy chaebol family in Korea, which she had no idea about because her mother is still around, but they never really talk much about their father. So she really didn't know much about her father or where he came from, just the fact that he is from Korea. So I honestly don't really know why she thought that it was potentially this Japanese man as her father. But anyways, point is though, she took the genetics test, finds a chaebol family in Korea, and because they want to know more about her, they invite her to Korea to meet them and, you know, just get to know their long lost granddaughter a little bit more. So now she is whisked to Korea. She is determined to find out more about her father, more about her family, and just, you know more about, you know, her relatives, her culture, etc. Because to be quite frank, she really doesn't know much about the Korean culture. Her mother cooks Korean food like once a year, and I believe it was only on the anniversary of her father's death. So to be honest, other than that, she had no idea really in terms of Korean culture except for what she learned from K-dramas. This book was really cute. The amount of K-drama like parallels was insanity. I loved just how like craziness some of them were, like the umbrella under the rain, and you know that like kiss moments, just a lot of like things that they would watch in K-dramas and it would be like in here as well. It was just really freaking cute. The reason why I didn't give it higher than 3.5 stars is because I felt like Chloe was a little bit naive at times. There were a lot of things that her grandmother, Halmoni, was saying and doing that I was like, I feel like for someone who watched so much K-drama, I think you should expect things a little bit differently. And I don't know, maybe because she was really eager to meet her family, that she kind of like disregarded any like alarm bells in her head. I am not really entirely sure, but there are just so many like red flags that was going on in this book that I was like, this seems a bit weird to me. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to play out in your favor. So I don't know, like in terms of the character itself, I felt like have been a little bit smarter, I guess, but I could also see why she wanted to believe the best, because they're supposed to be her family. But either way though, I still enjoy this book. I like the friendships that were formed in there, just like the cultural identity and like the learning of her own culture. I thought that was really fascinating and intriguing to read about. I also loved the friendship like for her friends back home, and like how excited they were for her, and how they also brought like an element of, you know, homeliness as well. Just bringing her back home, be like, hey, don't forget about us, like, you know, like even though you're meeting your new family, like we're also like your real family because we've been with you this entire time kind of situation. I thought that was really well represented. But yeah, overall I still really enjoyed this book. I just wish that the main character was a little bit more, I guess. All right, then this next book I want to discuss is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book I gave 4.5 stars. So unfortunately, this book was not a favorite in terms of the other books I read. I feel like the other books I read from her were easily 5 stars. This was only 4.5 stars. Like, it was still a good book, don't get me wrong. Like 4.5 stars is a great rating, and I still really enjoyed it. I just think that, I don't know, like when I compare this book with her other books, I was like, this book just seems less, you know, less intense, less, I feel less connected. There were just things about this book that was just not as significant or as amazing as her previous books. So this book basically follows the Rivas family, and it kind of follows the father and the mother, and as their relationships progresses, and kind of like how he was not the greatest father as he's, you know, struck out to be a singer, but also trying to like have a family at the same time, and just like the ups and downs of the parents' relationships, while also like the kids and how their relationships were impacted by the father and his inability to really stay there and remain faithful. And so this book kind of like jumps back and forth a little bit between the present day and the past. I don't know, I feel like in a way it was kind of confusing for me, but at the same time though, like that wasn't really the case, because I was still able to follow along pretty well. But I don't know, I just feel like the time jump, something about it was a little bit off for me. The pacing, and I think it was primarily the disconnect with the characters. I feel like the other books, I think it's because you really follow one character. Like, you do follow other people's perspective, but it's really, end of the day, like one person. For example, Evelyn Hugo and the Seven Husbands, it's literally about Evelyn Hugo, and then Daisy Jones and the Six is mostly primarily about Daisy Jones. But this book though, it kind of follows the entire family, and so I feel like because of that, my attention was like scattered throughout everyone, and I couldn't really focus on just one person, and so I think that's why I have a disconnect. But I still really enjoyed it. I thought this was incredibly well done. I heard later that the dad was one of the husbands for Evelyn Hugo, and I don't remember, because I read Evelyn Hugo like the year that I started this channel, and that's been like a couple years now, so I don't really remember like what happened in that book or like who the husbands' names were. So I'm like super curious to find out like how did Evelyn Hugo like play into this, and like the timeline there. But yeah, like overall, like it was still a really good book. Highly recommend this one. Like, Taylor Jenkins Reid is still such a good freaking amazing writer, but I realized that I do think when she writes primarily from one person, or like when it's mostly about one person, you just feel like a deep connection, whereas this one, you don't feel that deep connection because it's kind of revolves around multiple different characters. The next two books I want to discuss are part of a series. The first one is The Serpents, which I gave 3.5 stars, and the last book is Bronze Beast, which I gave 3 stars. So this is book 2 and book 3 of the Gilded Wolf series. I really enjoyed this series. I think overall I gave the series like 4 stars or so. I do think like the middle was, like the second book was okay. I feel like the second book for some reason is always just okay compared to like the other one. That I don't think this book suffered like second book syndrome exactly, but I just feel like it wasn't as intense, it wasn't as fast-paced, action-packed. So it definitely made the whole series like slow down a little bit compared to like the other two books. But I really enjoyed reading about the characters. I really enjoyed reading about how everything concluded at the very end, and the ending was definitely really well done. The ending of the second book was actually like really intense. Like it took me by surprise because I didn't expect it to be like that intense, but it was really freaking good. But yeah, that's all I can say for this one. The next book I picked up is Yolk, which I gave 3 stars. So this book I gave 3 stars. I would say this is probably my favorite out of the Mary H.K. Choi books, I think. But this book is still fucking weird. It basically follows 2 sisters, Jane and June, where they have extremely similar names, and they also look apparently similar enough that they can pass off one another, because what happens is that June is the older sister. She is actually a narcissist. She thinks she can get away with everything, and due to circumstances and due to like health situations, she basically takes her younger sister's identity so she can take advantage of the health insurance without even asking for her sister's permission. And so then now the 2 of them are kind of entangled with this whole like situation that June brought up because of what had happened. And as the story progresses, you know, you learn more about the sisters, their relationship with each other, and just kind of how much things have impacted the 2 of them and what brought them to this point in time. I don't know, like I feel like I like this book more, but I didn't love it. Like I feel like her writing for some reason just never sits well with me. Like I don't know what it is, like her storyline, her characters, like the writing style, the pacing, like there's just, I just feel like everything about how she writes, I just doesn't, it's not something that's like really for me. It's not like my cup of tea. But I still, out of like all the books that she's read, I feel like this is probably one of the better ones, just because I really liked how the relationship of the sisters were explained, and just kind of how like how they're so different, but at the same time, like when it comes to push and shove like this, they come together. And I really liked how, you know, like how the author portrayed all of that and presented all of that, which is why at the end of the day I still think that this was one of my favorite ones out of all the books that she's written. But compared to other books, this is still just an okay read for me. Then the last and final book I want to discuss today is Let's Call It Doomsday by Katie Henry. This book I gave 3 stars. So the main reason why I picked this book was because years ago at this point, I don't know when this book came out, but someone had mentioned about how her books were so funny and so entertaining, and that is why I decided to pick up this book. So I was like, I want an entertaining read. That is so far off what this book is about. This book follows a girl called Alice who truly believes that the world is going to end soon, and she is a prepper. She gets ready for it. She is constantly worried about it. She has lots of anxiety issues about the world ending and how to prepare for it, and making sure that her family is safe, which obviously is very important, but it kind of like overtakes her life to the point that her parents don't even really know what to do with her anymore. They try to accommodate what she's thinking and what she's like fearing, obviously, but at the same time they're also trying to make sure it doesn't go too out of hand because she does have a younger sister. And it also follows a girl called Hannah Marks, where one day Alice is at her therapist and she meets Hannah, and it turns out that Hannah can somehow see the future, and she tells Alice that I know when the world is going to end. And so now the 2 of them are just engaged with each other, obviously. Alice is like feeding off of Hannah's like charisma and personality, as well as the fact that she can clearly tell her like when the world's going to end, but she needs like some more information. She needs to find this prophet. And so Alice is like, you know, hanging out with her, trying to figure out exactly when so she can prepare and be ready for this moment, the time that she's been waiting for her entire life. And like the story just was not like I was expecting this like funny story, this like, I don't know, entertaining story. That was not the case with this book at all. To be quite frank, it was actually very deep, very intense, very serious. Definitely more like towards the serious, sadder tones for me, whereas opposed to like basically the exact opposite of what I was expecting, which is like funny, lighthearted, like entertaining. Yeah, this is the exact opposite of that book. So That being said though, I feel like I went in with definitely the wrong expectations, which is why I didn't enjoy as much as I did. But what I did enjoy, which is why I still gave the book 3 stars, is because I think that the way how the author portrayed Alice's relationship with her family, primarily with her parents and her sister, I thought that was really well done. I also liked her realization at the end, like, you know, it's okay if things are unknown, you know, and I liked the message that the author was writing and portraying in this book. So overall, like, even though it was not at all what I expected, I think that there were some great messages in this book nonetheless. So I still, at the end of the day, thought it was an okay read. So anyways, these are all the books that I read for the month of May. I feel like my mind right now is just like so scattered right now because I have so many things going on. This is not my usual day to film. This is not my usual time to film. I'm actually incredibly tired. I need to head out in a few minutes because I need to like go to like a orientation. So it's just been hectic, but I did want to film this video. But anyways, let me know down below if you have read any of these books before. What do you guys think about them? Do you guys agree with what I had to say? But as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. And if you see more content of me, please don't forget to subscribe down below as well as the notification bell. And as always, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!